Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. It's all about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Alan Jackson, titled Angels and Alcohol. Now those of you who've been following me for a while now, you know that I'm a fan of Alan Jackson. Hell, when he dropped the Bluegrass album back in 2013, it even landed on my list of my top albums of 2013. And in that review, I kind of struggled to articulate why Alan Jackson just works so damn well for me as one of my all-time favorite country singers. And since I grew up in the 90s listening to country radio, I didn't all that unique here, but I was still very curious. But about a year and a half later, I think I managed to come to something of a conclusion in this particular category. Consistency. With rare exceptions, his two gospel albums, the Alison Krauss produced record that he made in the mid-2000s, and of course the Bluegrass album, Alan Jackson's material is oddly timeless for me, especially when it comes to the impressive line of classic songs that he wrote himself. Since he started cranking out critically acclaimed records in the 90s all the way to, well, now, he's had an impressive stream of quality for nearly 25 years, to the point where there'll be plenty of critics out there to find it hard to criticize the guy beyond, well, he's in his comfort zone, he's done that before. And to some extent, they're not exactly wrong there. Produced by Keith Stegall, neo-traditional country that doesn't shy away from rough subject matter, that's always written with a deft touch and presented with boundless charisma and a ton of heart. It's definitely not really cool music or trendy music, but it doesn't need to be. And sure, he occasionally drifts away on occasion to the lightweight beach material seen on a Kenny Chesney or a Zac Brown Band album, but he tends to infuse it with enough charm and humor and some good wit that doesn't just become mellow beach fodder, which is always a big plus for me. But recent years have shown a bit of a shift for Alan Jackson, a restlessness that led him to part with his longtime label Arista Nashville and set up his own imprint and EMI. It led to his tightest collection of songs in 2012 with 30 Miles West, the majority of which Alan Jackson wrote himself. Then came the Bluegrass album, the album he'd been threatening to make for years, and proved that his threats should have been followed through a hell of a lot more often, because that album was great. But now we've got a new slice of country from Alan Jackson, and you can bet I'm covering it. How'd it turn out? Well, to some extent, I'm going to echo a lot of critics, it's another Alan Jackson record. Not one of his best, a shade weaker than 30 Miles West, and a step down from some of his greats and the Bluegrass album, but it's definitely not one of his worst, but a solidly consistent slice of neo-traditional country that just immediately hits me in my musical comfort zone. I can put it on, definitely appreciate it immediately, but I can't help but feel it doesn't quite have the same emotive punch as some of his best. In other words, definitely a rock-solid album, but I do think it's a little bit shy of great, gotta be honest there. So let's get the pieces that any country and Alan Jackson fans should know out of the way first, the pieces that you will hear on any, if not all, of his albums. Jackson himself, he sounds great. His choice to embrace neo-traditional country throughout his entire career means that middle age is a natural fit for him, and he's got one of the most expressive and emotive voices in country music that's liquid smooth and has an honest, understated power that comes with real authenticity and a veteran's poise. He believes what he's selling and he can sell it well. And working with longtime producer Keith Stegall only further emphasized that poise. Plenty of liquid steel guitar, rollicking crunchy grooves, solid understated bass work and percussion, and subtle acoustic texture that comes through on every strum or note from the strings. Again, this is not exactly country you'll hear on most mainstream radio stations these days, but Alan Jackson's always had a way around his hooks and a traditional song structure, sometimes to the point where you honestly wish he pushed his melodic composition a little bit harder or get a little bit more experimental. I mean, what else could you lose at this point? That said, I'd argue this record isn't quite as tightly composed as some of his previous work, and this isn't quite a bad thing either. Let me stress this. He's got a habit of giving his longtime band plenty of space to breathe and really flex their chops. And with the extended intro and outro on You Can Always Come Home, the earnest mid-tempo restraint on The One You're Waiting On with great understated drums and an excellent melodic hook, the gentle melancholy of I Leave a Light On, and those steel guitar accents all over the album, that time that he's giving to his band is well earned. And of course there are some subtle accent moments that I really like. The harmonica and the rickety rollick of Gone Before You Met Me and the closer, Mexico and Tequila and Me, and the bouncy fiddles on Flaws. Now if I were to nitpick, I do think from a compositional point of view, Alan Jackson could have afforded to use a little bit more minor key progressions on tracks like Angels and Alcohol or Leave a Light On, just to push the tracks a little bit darker, add a little bit more melancholy to them. Because while I understand that acceptance and maturity is a key motif of the songs, one of the key motifs of Alan Jackson's career, they can feel a little bit lacking in drama and emotional stakes for me. Now this takes to the lyrics, and really, if you're familiar with Alan Jackson's conventional brand of songwriting, or those of the writers that he works with, you won't be all that surprised here. What is surprising is that the two most innovative tracks on this album in terms of the songwriting weren't written by him. The first being the dream going back in time to the days of Tom Sawyer of all people on Gone Before You Met Me, where he's reassured that he did make the right choice to stay with his wife. It's a pretty cute song. But Alan Jackson's always been the strongest with dramatic material, which makes the heartfelt opener You Can Always Come Home, and the love letter to the lonesome girl looking for Mr. Right across the bar on The One You're Waiting For, it makes him really ring true with a lot of power. Probably the best song on his album in the latter case, and it's written by somebody else. Beyond that, you get the flirtatious humor on You Never Know, the obligatory vacation tune on Mexico Mexico, Tequila and Me, and his characteristically potent fables about failed relationships on the title track and I Leave a Light On. Where this album does slip a little in the writing is when it gets to some of the jokier songs, like the lead-off single Jim and Jack and Hank. Sure, it's cute and played with some solid framing, but it's a song that trades on cheap female stereotypes that doesn't really have much of a punchline, at least for me. And then there's When God Paints and Flaws, the former a worship tune about appreciating the world around you that feels a little bit placid and doesn't really do much for me, and the latter your standard self-esteem anthem that feels oddly clumsy in the writing. And this album has a point that does knock it back a shade, it'd be here. Some of the technical writing feels a little bit sloppy to me. Rhymes that don't quite land. They probably could have used another draft to just tighten things up a little bit. The writing's still good, he's still got a natural gift for cadence, but some of the writing could have been better. But you know what, in the end, it's an Alan Jackson album. Even when it's middle of the road like this one is, it's still solid. The performance and production already knocks it up a point, only lacking a little bit in truly excellent songs that can rise to the level of his best. So for me, easy 7 out of 10, definitely a recommendation if you're a country fan. Hell, even if you like modern country, you can't go wrong with Alan Jackson, and you should all know that by now. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Yeah, not much to really say about this one. Good album, I had a lot of fun with it. But until then, if there's anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, more than happy to give them a listen. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.